Welcome to the Credit Hour Policy and Procedures Demonstrating Compliance training module. This PowerPoint presentation is made available to all institutions as a resource during the application, candidacy, and accreditation processes, as well as for peer reviewers. Permission is granted to colleges and universities within the jurisdiction of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education to utilize this recording as needed for the purposes of compliance activities. As a reminder, the information provided in this presentation is the property of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and the reproduction, distribution, or transmission of the presentation, in part or in whole, is expressly prohibited without prior written consent from the Commission. For permission requests, email the Commission at president@msche.org. I am Dr. Terrence Peavy, Vice President for Institutional Field Relations at the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and I will share updates on the policy and procedures related to Credit Hour. The policy was implemented in July of 2022 and is available at the Commission's website at msche.org. The presentation, specifically developed for institutional representatives and peer reviewers, will cover the purpose of the policy and related procedures, required evidence for compliance, peer review guidance, along with helpful resources and key definitions within the policy. Let's begin. The purpose of the Credit Hour policy is to offer member institutions an opportunity to demonstrate its methodology for assigning credit hours. Within that methodology, the institution must also show its approximation of the work completed by students that aligns with the best practices within higher education. The policy also defines the Commission's expectation for institutional credit hour policies, procedures, and methodologies. The credit hour metric was developed by the United States Department of Education to measure an institution's eligibility for federal funding. Different methodologies may be utilized by institutions to determine credit hour. That said, commonly accepted practices used in higher education should be exercised to demonstrate rigor and coherence at all levels regardless of modality. It is important to maintain consistency in credit hour determinations to prevent the loss of credits for students. All policies, procedures, and/or methodologies related to credit hour will be reviewed by the Commission and peer reviews during the self-study evaluation and on-site evaluation process. Now, let's discuss procedures for credit hour methodology. For all types of courses, disciplines, programs, credential levels, formats, and modality, an institution must have a formal policy, procedure, and/or methodology for assignment of credit hours. The policy should be based on student achievement of stated learning outcomes, be reasonably equivalent and conform to commonly accepted higher education practices, and address level of rigor appropriate to the offered programs or degrees. As they develop the credit hour policy, institutions must be aware of applicable regulations, such as federal and state regulations, and ensure compliance with them. Institutions must also be aware of local education agency regulations to ensure compliance as well. For example, institutions that are members of the university system are responsible for adhering to those system regulations. The institution's methodology to award credit must be based on a student's completion of required education experiences and demonstrated achievement. This must be evaluated by a qualified faculty or another appropriately qualified individual who have undergone appropriate training. Additionally, such experiences must be clearly associated with stated student learning outcomes at course, program, and institutional levels where appropriate. It is important that institutions show sufficiency of course content to substantiate designated credit hours. Again, note that the institution must consider alternative delivery methods, measurement of student work, academic calendars, disciplines, and credential levels. The Commission recognizes that there are variations in the number of credits associated with certain programs and that there are programs offered in non-traditional formats for which credit hour may not be relevant and/or reliable quality measure. In lieu of credit hour policies or procedures, non-U.S. institutions must describe a methodology for assigning value to an academic activity and are subject to all the same requirements of this policy to demonstrate sufficient course content, rigor, and program length appropriate for the credential. Methods of alternative learning approaches are as follows. Credits awarded through the assessment of experiential learning, prior non-academic learning, including military service, competency-based education, direct assessment, and other alternative learning approaches. Some examples of other alternative learning approaches are the use of portfolios or credit-bearing tests like the Collegiate Level Examination Program, also known as CLEP. Periodic review. This slide places special emphasis on the institution's responsibility to monitor its credit hour policy and procedure. A well-established culture of periodic review will ensure equity and fairness for students, alignment with student learning outcomes, academic goals, and strategic priorities, as well as the ability to develop new methods for learning and assessment. The Commission, through its multi-level decision-making process, will review the institution's credit hour policy and its implementation via the self-study evaluation process. The multi-level analysis begins with the peer evaluators and then continues with the Committee on Evaluation report, who conducts further analysis and proposes action to the Commission. Review of the credit hour policy will be conducted in the context of Standard 3, Design and Delivery of the Student Learning Experience. As noted earlier, the Commission expects rigor and coherence of policy and procedures to programs and coursework, as well as adherence to common accepted practices in higher education. In order to assess compliance under Standard 3, Design and Delivery of the Student Learning Experience, examples of the required evidence needed by the institutions are listed on this slide. In addition to providing the information listed here are a few more helpful tips. In addition to providing a copy of the policy, procedures, and methodologies, provide URL and public source information for these documents. When providing course or program review procedures and sample approval documentation, you may use graphic or flowcharts to show process. As you describe evaluation process to verify academic period length and compliance with credit hour requirements, provide brief narrative demonstrating how institutions' assignment of credit hours conforms to commonly accepted practices in higher education. Do provide narrative analysis as well as evidence that demonstrates consistency with policy application across programs, locations, and delivery format throughout the institution. Institutions must use the Institutional Federal Compliance Report for submission, which is available on msche.org. Institutions must provide evidence that will best demonstrate the institution's compliance. Documentation of policies and/or procedures must be in writing, approved and administered through the applicable institutional processes, accessible to constituents, and reflect current practices. In the next two slides, we would like to review two very essential definitions central to this policy. First, credit hour. Credit hour is the amount of student work defined by an institution as approved by the institution's accrediting agency or state approval agency that is consistent with the commonly accepted practices in post-secondary education. Subsection 1 states that the amount of student work per credit hour should reasonably approximate 1 hour of classroom or direct faculty instruction and a minimum of 2 hours of out-of-class student work each week for approximately 15 weeks for one semester or trimester hour of credit, or 10 to 12 weeks for 1/4 hour of credit, or the equivalent amount of work over a different time period. Additionally, 1 credit hour should at least represent an equivalent amount of work for other academic activities as established by the institution, including laboratory work, internship, practica, studio work, and other academic work leading to the award of credit hours. Subsection 2 allows for the institution to consider a variety of factors in determining the amount of work associated with a credit hour. such as the mode of instructional delivery, academic calendars, or discipline-specific or degree-level expectations. The second definition pertains to clock hour. Clock hour is defined as a period of time over a variety of options, such as a 50 to 60-minute class, lecture, or recitation, a 50 to 60-minute faculty-supervised laboratory, shop training, or internship, or 60 minutes of preparation in a correspondence course. As noted on this slide, clock hours may be applicable to all modalities, including distance education. Pay close attention to how clock hours are interpreted in synchronous and asynchronous courses, according to the clock hour definition listed on this slide. Please note that definitions for the following terms are listed in the credit hour policy document. Resources related to the credit hour policies and other pertinent information is here for your reference. Please do not hesitate to contact your Middle States Commission on Higher Education Vice President Liaison if questions arise. Thank you once more for listening to this training module. Have a nice day.